So God has given us all a call on our lives, and we tend to want to think it is this big thing in the ministry. Some people don't feel like there's a call on our life, but we do. We have a call, and it has a set time. And the Bible is full of references to that appointed or due time. So in Habakkuk 2:3, for the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry. So looking at this, if we look at appointed, that gives the idea of a set time for a specific purpose, a time set apart for something specific, for that particular call in your life. Even though sometimes we may have smaller portions, the main thing has a set time for it to happen. At the end gives the connotation of coming to completion, the end of a process, the fulfillment of a promise for this vision, or a conclusion. It will speak. This is the best part to me. It gives the connotation of to think of breathing something into life, fanning the flames of faith, bringing to life with the substance of things hoped for. We know faith is the substance of things hoped for. That means it brings them into being. God created the world by his words. He said in the beginning, let there be light, and there was light. He spoke things into existence. And so it will speak means this is coming into existence. It says wait for it, and that gives us the idea of enduring again, meaning we're going to have to be patient. It will not tarry. Tarry means to fall behind. So this is telling us it will be on time. It may not feel like it's on time. It may not be when we wanted it to happen. In fact, it's usually not, but it will be on time. Isaiah 55 tells us that God's word will accomplish what it is sent out to do. It will accomplish his work and his will. So we think we know what the perfect time is, but we don't know. Okay. Sometimes it seems like it's tarrying and like it's never going to happen. But there is that set or due time. So years ago, when I was baby Christian, I experienced something that greatly affected me and changed me. I had been invited by my neighbor to go to church with her. This is where I actually got saved. We became friends. She would give me books and tapes. Yeah, it was a long time ago, about faith. And we would go on walks together, and we would talk about the Lord in church. And my sister-in-law lived right by where we were walking, and I felt led to invite her to go with us. And we were not friends. She was very jealous of me. I was probably jealous of her. She did a lot of things to me. She stole things from me that were treasures for me that my grandfather had given me. She would tell lies about me. She would act inappropriately towards my husband, threw away our wedding video. I mean, she did a lot of crap. And so I really didn't want to share my new friend with her. I was being selfish. And whose interest was I thinking of? Mine. And it wasn't very long. I want to say like a week, and it may not have been that quick, but it was quick. Very short time later, her life just fell apart. She stepped into this great life of sin. She got on drugs. She was cheating on her husband. She left and drug her newborn baby along with her. And this lasted for years, y'all. And it got so bad. And I felt so responsible. Now, we know in actuality, God could have taken care of that had she been willing. He could have sent someone else. If he can use a donkey to speak, he can get around us, right? But I was young at the time and I didn't know this. And so I felt so responsible because I didn't do what I was supposed to do. And so I began to pray for her. I felt like I had let God down. I asked him for another chance, and I asked him to give me the love for her that he had for her, to allow me to love her as he loved me. Um, and to see her as he saw her. And so I did, and I prayed daily, and I ran with it. I mean, I prayed diligently for years. Okay. I prayed for months, years, nothing happened. Things got worse. She wound up being strung up on meth. She moved away with her daughter. The divorce was nasty and, all kinds of crap going on, stressful. But I just kept praying and I kept praying and I kept praying. And it took a really long time. We would see her daughter, on the weekends, and I would try to pour my life into her. I took her to church, and every chance we got, we helped with her. Many years later, maybe 10, 12 years later, she moved back, and God opened a door. She lived close by, and her daughter had been going to church with us regularly, and she was going to get baptized. My son had gotten baptized, and she was going to get baptized. So her mom came to church with us, which was just phenomenal and shocking. And when she came, she gave her life to Christ, and she got baptized that day. She didn't have a change of clothes or any of that. She had done horrible things in her life. And she did continue to struggle. And so some people may argue and say that she wasn't saved because she did remain on drugs for most of the rest of her life. But I really felt like she was just not able to grow and mature like she needed to. She didn't accept God's forgiveness. But I feel in my heart that she was saved that day, and I'll stand on that. So it was years before I saw the answer to that prayer. But that seed was planted. It started way back in the beginning, and my prayer actually was answered then. God knew the end. He knew the answer, and he accomplished that. Okay. And it took time for us just to see it in life. He wasn't late. He was right on time. He had an appointed time for that. I could have given up, but he gave me his strength to stand. All I had to do was be obedient, and that was to pray and be willing to step out and not be too shy about it. This grew my faith tremendously, and was kind of the first step towards becoming a mature Christian. And I can't even tell you, am I a mature Christian now? I don't know. I definitely still have plenty of growing to do, as we all do. It's a journey, and we are always moving and growing and perfecting and maturing. So what is this journey all about? It's the building of character. We have to endure through all of these things so that we can have our character built. We need our character built. We must allow this to happen in order for God to be able to use us. It's all about purification. He has to test us and try us to see what we are made of. Is he going to be able to use us? It's almost as if he's making us a vessel, a clay vessel. Okay. So if we're going to make a clay pot, we have to get it completed first. Then it has to be tried and tested and put in the fire. Okay. Does that sound like fun? It's not fun. It has to be solidified before we can use it. It has to be ready so that it can withstand and hold and be prepared. That is what God is trying to do in our life. He wants to make us vessels of honor that he can use. We don't contain the substance. We don't have to do necessarily the work. We just have to be a vessel and pour out what he gives us to pour out. He provides the stuff inside. So understanding a little bit about how clay is made really kind of helps us to understand what God is doing. So to purify clay for pottery, the process is called levitation. And they take raw clay and then they mix it with water in a large bowl or basin. And as they're doing this, the impurities, the heavier impurities like the rocks and things, they settle to the bottom. And the lighter things, the good things that they want, well, not necessarily the good things they want, the lighter, smaller debris will float to the surface, and that can be cleaned off and pulled off. Okay, so you're cleaning the clay by separating what you don't want. what is unusable, what is not clean. That is almost like our salvation. Okay. This is then after we are baptized, so to speak, in water and separated and purified in that way. You have to further filter things out. And this is done by going through a sieve to remove even finer, smaller impurities. Okay. If you have impurities in clay before you fire it, it can cause a lot of problems. These can cause a discoloration, so things don't look right, cracking, warping. You can have pinholes, and this can even cause potential disasters and explosions. So if God does not get these things out of our lives, it can cause a lot of damage along the way. And I'm sure almost all of us have been have experienced some of this damage. I've been through church splits and things, very painful. And I would bet a lot of that came from impurities in the heart of man, because none of us are pure. We're all being cleansed. We're all being fired. God is removing these things from our lives. So what impurities does God need to remove from our lives before we can be used? I was naive as a young Christian and thought I was ready. I thought I was ready to be in full-time ministry. And I didn't realize there was so much that had to be removed and is still being removed from our lives. Envy, gossip, strife, lust, gluttony. What else? What are those things, those impurities in our lives that God has to remove and expose before he puts us in the fire? That's just before we go in the fire, right? They've got to be removed before the next step can even start. So pottery is a clay that is molded and fired, and then they put a glaze on it to finish it, okay? So they're going to put this glaze on it. If you think about pottery also, it's going to be molded by hand, okay? And what is that? Squeezing and pressure. And it's first mixed with what's called a blender. So we've separated the clay through this purification from water. Then we're going to press it through that filter, that sieve, okay, to force out the excess water, the excesses. Then we're going to make it into a cake and chop it up into little pieces. That doesn't sound very good, does it? It sounds painful. It sounds uncomfortable, right? And then we can press it against the mold. And it takes a lot of molding and pressing to get it into the shape that it needs to be and to take off the rough edges, okay? Next is, if that wasn't enough, it's got to be placed in a furnace, in the fire, and then dried. But it's got to be covered inside and outside with a glaze. And so it's going to be put in the fire of an extremely high heat, and that's going to mature the clay. And that is what it's called. It's called maturing the clay as we go through these trials to mature us. Okay. So high temperatures have to harden the piece to enable it to hold water. If you can't hold it, you can't pour it out. Okay. It doesn't pour out itself. It doesn't give any of itself, of its own clay. It is only a vessel to hold that which is given. Okay. It only holds what's placed in it and then pours it out. So the glaze is a really important part of this. It's put on the surface of the unfired pot, and this causes actual changes in the composition, changes in us, infuses to the pot. So God has to further change us to be fit for use, okay? Then he's put it in the kiln, which is very, very hot, like 2,000 degrees for a long time, okay? And sometimes that's not good enough. It has to be put in again, okay? And so sometimes it takes several firings, and then they polish it and do some more things. So in order to be used by the potter, what does clay need to be? It must be moldable. We have to be willing to be changed. It must be pliable enough to allow pressure to change its shape. But it also has to be strong enough to withhold that molding, okay? Firm enough to hold on to that shape, and it has to be strong enough to withstand the fire in the kiln, okay? It has to be worked through thoroughly so that it doesn't have any holes, air bubbles, water in it, because those things cause the clay to be unstable and can cause destruction. Then when it's in the fire, it undergoes a transformation. It becomes hard and durable. It's got to be pure and porous where it can absorb things and hold things. And so God uses all of these trials to make us a usable vessel. That's what he wants. It's not that we have to have this great power to do something. It's actually the opposite. We have to put our flesh down and allow him to be poured out of us. So what does it mean to be a vessel of honor? So let's look at this scripture here, 2 Timothy 2:20. But in a great house there are not only vessels of gold and of silver, but also of wood and of earth, some to honor and some to dishonor. So he can take many of us from different sources and make us into vessels of honor. Verse 21, it says, if a man therefore purge himself from these, talking about those impurities, those sins, he shall be a vessel unto honor, sanctified and meet for the master's use, prepared for every good work. So let's look at what that means. Okay, so here vessel is used to talk about a physical object, container, vessel, but it is also implies to metaphorically describe people as instruments or vessels for God's purpose. This can be common or sacred objects. So, as I have said, this can be in the church or it can be in our everyday lives. Okay, and more often it needs to be in our everyday lives. So, the vessel, the implement, the container, then it has to be purged. We've got purge in there, to cleanse thoroughly, okay, to purify. And that's what the water and the purification, the kneading and the getting out those impurities that we were just talking about, why that is so important. We have to get ourselves out of the way. We have to get rid of impurities, okay? This refers to spiritual and moral purification, all right? Sanctification. To be a vessel of honor, honor means to make ready, okay? To establish, to prepare, okay? Make firm, to get it ready. This implies a sense of anticipation or readiness for a future event to be used by the Lord, okay? Sanctify, to make holy, consecrate, set apart. Setting something apart for a specific purpose for a set time, okay? Meet means useful, profitable, and beneficial. In the New Testament, it's talking about people or things that are valuable for a certain purpose, especially in the service to God or to others. So we all have a certain purpose in our lives, and we are all equally important in that service. Work here, this means work, action, or deed. It's a wide range of activities: physical labor, moral, spiritual, okay, just as is the God's call in our lives.